Hello, and thank you so much for tuning in. I am Dr. Ashurina Ream. I have partnered with T.J.Maxx to have a conversation with these incredible women about the balancing act and how our identities change as we are also caregivers. I want to start a little bit about introducing myself, and then I'll introduce these ladies on stage here with me. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist based in Arizona. I'm a mom of 2, and I've also started the platform Psyched Mommy, which is a perinatal mental health specialty focusing on women and their families from pregnancy to postpartum and beyond. I have Kellie Gerardi here with me, who is an astronaut, a researcher, a popular science communicator, and she's also the author of children's book series Luna Moona, which is awesome. And I have Yolanda Miner here, who is the Save the Children Mississippi State Director. She has more than 16 years of experience in education. Her passion is working with children from birth to 5, and she's also a mother of 3. Thank you so much for joining us today, ladies.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, clap it up. One of the things that women come to me in my practice and they often talk about is this identity crisis that they did not expect in parenthood and motherhood. They expected all of these positive feelings and experiences, and something happens and everything has changed. Their bodies, their relationships, their friendships, their career, and they're left wondering, why? I feel like I don't know myself anymore. Who am I? And an identity crisis in parenthood is actually quite common. It's a point of confusion about who we are, what we're supposed to be doing, what our purpose is. And this happens not just in parenthood, but when we change careers, when we start relationships and we end relationships, when we relocate. But parenthood is definitely one of those big disruptors when we care for small children and we immerse ourselves in caregiving. So these circumstances really leave people, and left me feeling this very way, where I question, who am I? How do I re-identify with this person I am, or reacquaint myself? And I'm wondering, Kellie, did you experience this identity shift as you entered motherhood? And if you did, what was that like for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say, leaving the planet and knowing you're not on the same planet as your child is really mind-bending. When I looked back at planet Earth, I will say that was my first thought. And that was interesting to me as someone who's been so career-focused my whole life, that my first thought in my biggest moment truly was thinking about, oh my God, I'm not in this moment on the same planet as my baby. I have a 6-year-old daughter at home. And so in answer to your question, I would say yes and no. Motherhood for me was always on the vision board of my life. I just always pictured myself having kids one day. But the other half of that vision board had really big, lofty career goals. And I quickly found out that there is no such thing as this mythical perfect time to start a family. You mentioned the physical changes. I was effectively grounded for 9 months. I had dreams of, preparing for a parabolic and aerobatic flight. I couldn't do those during pregnancy. So that was really, it left me a lot of time to sit and stress about, what is my path now? What does this mean for me? Right after giving birth, I had Spanx under a flight suit just to keep everything in place. I still have pelvic floor anxiety, and so I think there is a lot of different transformations that we go through. What I will say is I did not lose my identity in motherhood. I would say my identity expanded in a really fulfilling way. And I think I feel so strongly about visible representation, especially for roles that women and mothers in particular are not, typically seen in. We've had fewer than 100 women in history who have ever flown to space, and then even fewer of those who have been mothers. And so having visible representation of those type of multitudes, and for me, that was the most rewarding part, is seeing that through the eyes of my 6-year-old daughter who, is just growing up thinking, that's what girls do, and I love that.
I do too. I really do love that. And I wish that more people get to experience that, in their homes, to see that I can do both.
Yeah.
Women have a hard time negotiating who they were before motherhood. And you mentioned even, being career driven. I can relate to that. And I had this point of hesitation as I entered motherhood, how do I balance these both? And when they have a hard time reconciling, I hear them in my office say things like, how can I be a mom and a great partner? How can I be a mom and, for myself, a psychologist? Yolanda, why do you think women have a hard time balancing motherhood and an identity outside of motherhood? And maybe what struggles and challenges have you noticed through your work with Save the Children about this?
Great question. Thank you so much. As a mother of 3 and a mom that has been supporting young moms across rural America that live in poverty, there is not a roadmap out to parenthood and following your career path. Let me just share that parenting is the most rewarding job there is, but it's the hardest with no instructions. So it's like a hit or miss with a parent. So some of the struggles that I see with parents, especially the parents that we serve through Save the Children in rural communities that live in poverty, they wake up in survival mode. They're waking up, how can I pay my rent? How can I keep the lights on? So in addition to balancing a career and living in poverty, I think that that is a challenge in itself. So that's why it's so important what Save the Children does in rural communities, providing the resources that we do to parents to help build their confidence, to help build their self-esteem, for them to be those role models to their parents to say, hey, you can do this as well.
I totally agree with you. And I think that you bring up some really important issues and some of the barriers that parents can face. You know, how do I find time for myself? I really love what we're talking about today with Claim Your And this movement, how we're learning that women are typically confined to singular identities. We are either, smart, or we're funny, or we are pretty, or we're either or, a mom or a CEO. Kellie, what do you think we stand to lose if we are confined to one or the other?
Yeah, and it's funny, I just made this friendship bracelet in the other room that says space and sparkle. So, I really love the multitudes, but I think when women are forced to choose a binary or to be seen as put in a box, we lose that big picture of what our full potential is in life. And when I think about that, I think less about in terms of, what I individually would stand to lose, but I think a lot about what my daughter would stand to lose. I mentioned earlier that, fewer than 100 women in history have ever been to space. I mean, really let that sink in. This is the very beginning. And gender schemas are formed so early in life, to the point where I have been to space. I'm going to fly again to space. My second space flight was just announced this week. When you ask me to close my eyes and picture an astronaut, I picture a man. And that is something that, I have done all of the work and have gone there myself. I still don't picture myself. But when my 6-year-old is asked to draw a picture of an astronaut, she's drawing a girl. She's drawing herself. And I'm seeing the needle move in my own household. And that has been extraordinary. And I think, to your question about what we stand to lose and also what we stand to gain, I think about how much can shift in just one generation. My mom was at my space flight with my daughter. And when my mom was growing up, women in the United States were not eligible to become astronauts. One single generation later, she's watching her daughter fly to space and she's watching her granddaughter take it for granted. And it brings me to tears just to even talk about, because I do feel like it's such a profound shift. And I think that is what we lose. But more importantly, it's what we stand to gain when we are able to embrace our multitudes and to embrace different skill sets and different identities in life, whether it's motherhood, whether it's career success, whether it's partnership, whether it's entrepreneurship, and those are all things that, I feel very strongly about being able to visibly represent in my household.
I agree with that. Dr. Alexandra Sachs is a reproductive psychiatrist, and she talks about the push and pull of motherhood, where we are pulled in because our children are dependent on us and they need us for so many things. And biologically, we are wired to do those things. But she also talks about how we push away because we recognize there are parts of ourselves that need tending to. And that causes tension. And in that tension, we start to question, is there something wrong with me? There must be something wrong with me if I feel this tension or if I feel off about this. And I see that in my practice where women will feel like they're sick. I'm unwell because I want something more. I want the and. Yolanda, can you share some tools and resources that Save the Children provides to not only empower caregivers to care for their children, but also to care for themselves?
Sure. I want to say that I have never met a parent that didn't want to give their child the best possible start in life, but many that don't know how or may even lack the resources that they need to be successful in life. Every parent wants their child to thrive and strive and be better than they are. So we want to live those lives before them that they can emulate. So some of the things that Save the Children does is we fill a gap. We fill that gap within our home visiting program where we are meeting parents where they are in their most vulnerable environment. We're bringing resources in. We're building their self-confidence, letting them know that you are the most important person in their lives and their first teacher. Because a lot of parents that we work with in rural communities, I find lack the confidence because it's generational poverty. So I think education is the ladder out. So when we go in and provide those resources to the parents, we also let them know you're wonderful, you're great. You can do this. You got this. Because parenting is hard. We also let them know to self-care. It's okay to step away, exhale, regroup, and then come back. It's okay.
It is important to know that, and I think sometimes we don't. It's like it seems like a simple message that you've got this and you can do this. And hearing that and having that support, I think that's truly really important.